Broadcasting from the spaceship in the sky to the simulation in the mind. Let's all embark on another journey of Conversations on the Fringe.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Josh Reed, and that is Vince Tagliavia. This is the Repill Project's Conversations on the Fringe, live with you every Friday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is where we talk about those things that aren't normally talked about, those things that go beyond the mind and consciousness, the realm of understanding, that we question the mysteries of the universe, whether it's things like aliens or UFOs or ghosts and apparitions or interdimensionality, quantum physics, or just the occult or conspiracy, whatever it might be. We talk about it all. And this is kind of our night to relax. What's up, Vince?
Absolutely, dude. Personal philosophy, personal ideas. We get all over the place. And I appreciate this show, man, because Fridays, I really do. I start early in the morning with only laughing a lot and enjoying my time, leading up to Fringe, and then into the weekend with more of this lane of things. And it helps me stay cool.
Yeah.
In the line of work that we do, looking at news and events all day, every day. It's nice to come into Friday and be like, all right, cool. We got, my morning show, which I like to joke around on. And then we've got Fringe in the night. It's like, it's going to be a good day. Plus, you know how much trouble this show has kept me out of?
On Friday nights. Keeps me out of the bars.
Exactly.
So,
I don't even drink anymore.
I know, right? Well, I do.
But... Wild.
So tonight things are going to be a little bit different. We're going to have some fun tonight. So one thing that we're not going to do, I know that there was a large sequence of events that happened today. I know there's a large sequence of events that happened in the last week. I already tweeted about this. You can go to my Twitter, my Telegram, my True Social. You can find out all about the events of the day. I'm not commenting on any of it. I don't really feel like talking about that stuff. It just drains us on Friday nights. Tonight's a fun night where we're sitting back, relaxing, chilling. A little heads up. After Fringe tonight, I got to go take a load of my moving stuff to the new house and unload it. Then I'm going to come back, and then I will join After Dark Chat. But Vince will be running After Dark Chat right after the show, so feel free to join that. The links will be posted on Social Red Pill. What's that, Vince?
I won't be on immediately after the show.
Oh, no, it's an hour after.
The time.
Yeah, it's like 30 minutes after the show.
Yeah.
So it starts like 30 minutes after the show. But I just wanted to let everybody know I will be joining later on in the evening. But I have to. I'm moving right now. I didn't get much done today, and I'm trying to get everything all settled to get out of this house in the next few days. So appreciate your guys' patience on that. Man, I'm excited about tonight's show. You want to tell people what we're doing? You're muted again, Vince. You want to tell everybody what we're doing?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's going to be a little bit of flashback action. We're going to look at previous guests and clips and just reflect on who's been here, what they've talked about, and open up conversation about that and just go through. Because, Josh, over the years, I suppose now, you've had some phenomenal guests, some really great ones, I think, that maybe we took for granted and we should revisit or have back on one day. But maybe I don't know, take for granted maybe is a little too harsh to say, right. But I'm just saying there's a lot of good stuff to go back and take a look at. So that's what we're going to do and just remember. And if you guys haven't seen it, here's a good opportunity to see what we've covered in the past. And it's all available on YouTube. So you could go back and check the videos out and we'll just discuss what's being discussed there.
Yeah, and you're going to upload these videos to our Rumble and YouTube. And
I can, absolutely.
Yeah, so we're going to upload all these clips that we're going to show you guys tonight. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to play a clip of an old Fringe episode. And then Vince and I are going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the topic that was being discussed.
Or the guest, right? Because
and the guest, right.
These guests there's a lot to go with each guest as well. And
right.
Beyond what they're just saying in these little clips. But I'm excited. Let's do it.
Right, so the first guy that we're going to actually talk about is Brad Olson. If you guys don't know, remember Brad Olson, award-winning author, public speaker, book publisher, event producer. He has the Esoteric series line of books out there. He's probably one of the subject matter experts that's talked on UFOs and aliens. He's at the Contact in the Desert every year, regular on Coast to Coast AM, multiple other shows. Great time just with him. We talked about Antarctica and UFOs, but let's go ahead and play this clip. I think it's ready. let me go ahead and transition. Then we're going to come right back and we're going to talk about this. You actually went to Antarctica. You're a 7-continent person. You went to Antarctica. And so put all the flat earthers to shame right now and just tell them that there's no ice wall, the earth's not flat.
Oh, I just spent 2 hours with Flat Earth Dave talking in circles with the guy. Yeah, been there, and his argument that you cannot fly over the continent, or there's an ice wall, or there's not a continent of Antarctica. And I'm just flipping through my phone. Here's some pictures of my sailboat trip down there. Yeah, it's a real place, man. And I've talked to exploration companies that have the large cargo planes that can pretty much fly anywhere on the continent. It's expensive, but you can do it. Because I was approached by a film crew right when I came back 3 years ago and started talking in conferences and on coast to coast and everywhere else. Because as far as I know, I'm the only researcher in this field that's been down there to look into specifically all these questions that we've heard of what might be going on down there. And while it's a fascinating place, Josh, some of the things I was looking for I didn't find, but then I came across some things that kind of shocked me.
Well, let's get into that a little bit. Now, a lot of your experience comes from researching various occult origins. And so is this what led you down to Antarctica?
Well, yeah, and I've been to all the other continents of the world and South America with the megaliths, and so much mystery on how those were built and put into place, and why you can never see chisel marks on the really old megaliths, and all the mystery behind ancient civilizations is a real fascination to me. And I'm sure with your audience and you too, Josh. And we've heard that there were stories of perhaps Atlantis under the ice, or pyramids poking through, or digging up archaeological ruins down there, or finding some on scan radar or with drones. So I really wanted to look into this and talk to the people who were down there, or boat captains who are down there regularly. And while I couldn't get any direct evidence on that, what I did find was there is definitely a big no-fly zone near the South Pole. And that's pretty interesting, because who the heck's flying over the South Pole to begin with? And so this was one of Flat Earth Dave's arguments. There was this flight. He was supposed to go across the continent. He went to the South Pole and came right back. I said, well, yeah, half of it is blocked off as a no-fly. They'll escort your plane out of there.
All right, so that was a clip with Brad, and he's talking about his trip and visit to Antarctica. Note, he never encountered an ice wall.
No, he flew right over the continent. Not all the way over, obviously, because there's a no-fly zone. But you know why he says there's that no-fly zone in part of Antarctica?
Why is that?
He said because there's a gaping hole.
I remember this.
Yeah.
That there's that the Earth is potentially hollow,
And that you could get underneath. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know
Admiral
what?
Byrd.
I tend to think that the flat Earth psyop, and yes, I'm going to call it a psyop. Okay, you guys can hate me if you want. I've debated this before. I've been berated before about this. No, 1, 2, 3. You know, but anyways,
I love that episode.
I think that this is what it's covering up.
Right.
I really do think that this is what it's trying to cover up.
Yeah. So Flat Earth is covering up kind of like a hollow Earth type of reality.
Right. You know,
not maybe necessarily an entire hollow Earth, but at least maybe some part of that is true. It appears. Right.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I had this, and this is a wackadoodle thought, right? But
weird. I love them. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day about. Remember that they said that the core of the Earth is reversing its rotation and had stopped spinning.
Yes, and I was like, no.
Right.
I had a fit about that one.
Right. It doesn't mean that the revolution of the Earth, the rotation of the Earth, is stopping. But
right.
But it just means that the core is basically slowing down to a point, getting ready for a reversal. This made me think, like, what if all of existence was actually substrates of the same thing? What if at the core of the Earth, right, is another universe in the center of that with an inhabitants of stars?
I don't know.
And those stars have galaxies, and those galaxies planets, and then that system just repeats ad infinitum. And that when we look out into space, what we're actually looking into, our universe, is a core of a massive planet that is beyond imagination.
Yeah, and it's just an infinite universe inside a universe inside a universe.
Yeah. But I don't know. I like thinking about these topics, and people can be like, you're crazy or what. I don't care. I like expanding the mind. You know, I've said it before that I think it's healthy to derive those thoughts of which nobody's ever thought before. I think that's
a special thing.
Yeah, I think that's evolution. I think that's how the universe grows and evolves. And I think because of that, the universe gives more attention to you or feeds back energy back to you. It's just the way I feel that it works. Too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You got to be a deep thinker.
It's interesting that you bring up the core when we started talking about Antarctica. Because Antarctica is actually the most volcanically active continent.
It is.
And so, you know, I wonder how this really ties together there. Maybe there's something in Antarctica. There is like a base there or something inside this hollow earth, or at least like a cave or a cavern of some sort.
No.
And maybe there's aliens in there and they control the core of the earth. I don't know. It's total speculating. Yeah.
But also, Antarctica is the most active volcanic region on the planet.
Yeah.
What does this tell you about that area in the South Pole and Antarctica? Geothermally.
It's active. It's moving. It's what?
Right. But underneath the ice sheet, what is happening? Geothermal activity. What are they saying is happening on the planet right now?
The core is slowing.
Climate change.
Climate change. Okay.
Remember they're taking pictures of all these chunks breaking off the ice sheets?
Yeah. They're very
on the most volcanically active region on the planet during a time when the core of the Earth is slowing down, getting ready for reversal in a 60 to 80 year cycle.
That's interesting. So
at the time of a solar maximum and a solar a galactic maximum.
Yeah, the melting of all the ice there would be more likely to come from
geothermal
lava.
Activity. Yeah.
Geothermal activity. There's lakes there. I don't know if they're entire lakes, but there's bodies of water there that, well, even on the surface, that never cool down because of the geothermal activity. It's just always a bath.
Yeah, it's that one lake that Russia drilled down miles into the ice sheath and found a freshwater lake right there and pulled microbacteria out of it.
Wild, dude. What if what if climate change was bogus but the ice sheets really were going to melt, and it's not melted by the sun, it's melted by this geothermal activity. It's
melted by the cyclic action that actually occurs within the planet. And you got to remember, it's like they tell us geologically that the Earth has this kind of like I think it's like the crustal displacement theory, to where it renews itself.
Yeah, I've seen this.
Right, so
I learned
it slowly is continuously renewing itself and pulling stuff down and bringing new stuff up.
Yeah.
And what if that didn't happen slowly over time, but instead happened very, very fast and rapidly?
That would be scary.
Right. And what if our ancestors had mapped that out with various different monuments to warn us?
Everything just shifts really quickly. Oh my gosh. I feel like, do I need to fasten some kind of seat near me with this belt on it? Man, wild. Antarctica is such a mystery. I'd love to go there.
Let's solve a mystery here because we were talking about flat Earth right there, and I'm probably going to get some slack from people in our audience, but
it's okay.
If the Earth is traveling at 30,000 miles around the sun, 30,000 miles per hour around the sun, why don't you feel that? Why don't you feel that force of the movement?
Because we're not accelerating.
What does that mean?
It means the speed's not increasing.
The speed is not increasing or decreasing, and there is no net force acting upon that motion. Right? So people are like, that doesn't make any sense. Well, when you're on an airplane, do you get up to go to the bathroom and fly back at 400 miles per hour?
No.
Why? because the airplane's at a constant speed. There is no change in that velocity, so you're at a constant velocity. And everything is the air in that airplane fuselage traveling back and forth at 1,000 miles per hour, 400 miles per hour? No, it's just laying stagnant in a fuselage that's moving at 400 miles per hour. And they say, well, what about the container? The container argument, and we talked about this the other day on that one show that we did, and I didn't really I was done I was tired of getting berated, and I realized that this guy is not an expert on any of this information, but is just going to yell over you. So I was just done. I figured we'd just do another show with Patrick or something. But the container argument is actually quite interesting because our atmosphere gets thinner and thinner as you go up. And what begins to hold the threads of the atmosphere together at the upper layers? Now, they say gravity, right? Okay. It's actually electromagnetism.
That's what I was going to guess. Wow.
Because it has to go through the ionosphere, and you have a bombardment of various charged particles. You have solar wind and cosmic bombardment. You have the electromagnetic field. You have the ionosphere. And so these particles, by the time they get up there, they're highly charged. And by this time, it creates this kind of, not a seal, but it basically just only lets a few particles out per square meter or whatever that is out of the earth. And so it's kind of interesting how it happens, but it's not necessarily a container, but it is a distribution of gas. And
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because we know that gravity and electromagnetism go hand in hand with each other. They are, in a sense, the same thing.
They are cousins.
Right?
If they were relatives, they would be cousins.
And so we're thinking about this on a scale of the Earth and its atmosphere and how it's held in from going out into space. But if you just take a few drops of water and you release it in space where you don't have any gravitational force, that ball of water becomes a sphere. And I wonder if that's electromagnetic in nature as well.
Well, the sphere is being held together by electromagnetic forces known as hydrostatic. So water itself, the molecule, is it's called a dipole, but it's a special. It's a dipolar molecule. And what I mean by that is that there are actually two positives and one large negative. And so what you have is you have two hydrogens, right, and one oxygen. The oxygen is massively larger in atomic structure than the two hydrogen. The two hydrogen are positive. They latch on. And what they do is they form what's called a hydrostatic bond that repels between them. And so they basically have a positive charge that's repelled at an angle between 103 to 121 degrees, okay, from that positive repulsion. And so you have this large negative charge, and then you have these two positive charges. So what happens is those two positive charges latch onto that large negative of another molecule, and you get this chain reaction. And so it's held together by this hydrostatic bonding. And you can actually test this in your house. If you go get a glass of water, and you fill the glass of water up, it'll bubble up over the top of the glass. You'll have this dome that forms on the top of the glass, and that's hydrostatic bonding.
Oh, my goodness.
But water itself is held together by ionic bonding.
Interesting.
Which is electromagnetic in nature. So, yeah, you're right. It is electromagnetic in nature. And why does it float there in front of you? Because you're both falling at the same rate of acceleration. I mean, that's really what... how do they maintain orbit? All orbit is around this planet is falling back down and maintaining that fall to push yourself back up.
It's the Buzz Lightyear theory.
Right. And gravity gets weaker as you get further and further away from the planet. So, on the outskirts of the planet. So, if you're on the surface level, it's 9.81 meters per second squared. And the further you get up, it starts reducing. I think it's like 6.2 or 6.3 meters per second squared at like 300 nautical miles. And it gets less and less the further out you go.
I want to explain the Buzz Lightyear theory thing. It's falling in style because they match their acceleration with the rate of
descent.
Coming back to Earth, so it just anyway. I love
see how science. We can get answers out when we're having just a cordial conversation. No, that's not. No.
I know. It takes a level. It takes some level of something in somebody to want to have a conversation. I think there was a little bit of malice with that.
I think the mistake there is we went in with the idea that it was an argument. We went in with the idea that it was a debate. instead of having a debate, we should have just had a conversation. But anyways, neither here nor there.
It was a great day. I'll tell you that.
But Brad Olson, very well respected
Yeah.
in the community. He's somebody who's been around the block, and he's been to Antarctica, and he says the Earth's not flat. So, but let's hear what he has to say. Oh, go ahead.
He may. Yeah, go ahead. I could always plug it after.
Let's hear what he has to say about Nazis. And I'm gonna have to adjust the length of these videos every time I bring them up, but don't worry, we'll get them. Can you talk a little bit more about the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, and kind of how maybe this came about?
Sure. Well, Dr. Mike Masala is a colleague of mine, and you can consider him a friend. We met on the set of Ancient Aliens about 5 or 6 years ago, both talking about Antarctica. And just want to show you an image out of my new book. This is Antarctica without the ice. So you can see at the top there, the Palmer Peninsula, Western Australia, is a different landmass than the old East Antarctica. And then if we go directly below South Africa here, this is the New Schwabenland claim. And look at that. There's a fjord that must be hundreds of miles long, because if it shows up on that map, as well as ways to access completely underneath the ice between those two land masses and get over to the other side. Now, the Germans took a huge interest in New Schwabenland, and the Admiral Dolent, who basically surrendered the Third Reich the Third Reich never surrendered, just the fighting forces, the Wehrmacht Army, the Luftwaffe Air Force, and the Kriegsmarines, the Navy. They surrendered, but the Third Reich never surrendered. So you could say, well, they're still kind of at large. And this is what we believe became the Fourth Reich, really immediately following. Now, here's a map of the New Schwabenland claim, and that Conan base would be right about here. That's where one of the craft is. Down here are the Schumacher Ponds, and that's where the initial party landed, a geothermal lake that never freeze. And then so the New Berlin base would have been right up here in that mountain range.
Wow.
And if I were ever to go back, and I have been offered to do some film work, but COVID hit and we couldn't follow through with going down there in 2020. But I would want to go to New Schwabenland and see if we could find where the old base was. And I think it would be a fascinating documentary. And plus, bring down some Geiger counters to see if the U.S. hit them during Operation Argus, which is still considered a top secret nuclear testing event in the late 1950s. But this was in response to America and the Allies. It wasn't just the Americans, but all of the countries that fought in World War II in an armada that went down to confront New Schwabenland in the Battle of High Jump. And by all accounts, were routinely routed. It wasn't even one-sided, because the opponents didn't lose anything. It was totally a rout. And then a couple of years later was the flyover of DC with this kind of craft, the Honeyboo craft, that was backward engineered from alien technology. And let's give some credit to the German engineers. They're pretty clever people too. I'm sure they threw in a few features of their own. They tried to make them fighting craft, but it didn't really work out that way in World War II, although the Allies they were afraid of the wonder weapons and some of the stuff that they heard Hitler had accumulated. And given 6 more months in that war, we might all still be talking German in Europe and even in America. It could have flipped very quickly. So the way history unfolded, but then they went underground, literally in bases in South America. And I went and visited a few. I was on the trail of some of the Nazis in South America. There's a great show called Hunting Hitler 3
it's awesome.
Seasons. Oh, man. You come away from that being like, yeah, Hitler, he lived, and so did a lot of other ones like Martin Bormann, the money man. And then they just started their industry and investing in stock and the paperclip Nazis that came here. And that's the Fourth Reich, Josh. They're still around, and even, you could say, wreaking havoc.
Dude. You know, how spot on was that? They're still around.
Okay. This is why, going back and listening to this now, with the context we have of what's happening today, is so interesting. What are your thoughts on this now? I mean, is it just kind of a confirmation to you, or what are your thoughts?
Um,
We
well, that
kind
was
of knew
about a
this at
year
the
and a half
time.
ago, and
Yeah.
the it was probably at the beginning of the Ukraine thing that he was on here. But yeah, now it makes complete sense. I mean, we were just talking about it last night that the majority of the concentration camps we were talking about this in the after chat. The majority of the concentration camps in Europe during the time led by Germany were actually ran by Ukrainians. And
No kidding. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that during the Nuremberg trials, the Ukrainian Nazis actually got immunity.
Weird.
So, oh yeah, there's tons of information out there about all this, but, this makes you wonder about a few different things. So, number one, I asked him about the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria, and these are the three different craft that are embedded into the ice in Antarctica that we're talking about. And he started talking about the land that the Nazis went and claimed and created their own base down there. This is one of the reasons they supposedly went to South America, because it is close proximity to Antarctica. But I absolutely 100% think that the Third Reich lived, the majority of them lived, Hitler lived, they all went to South America, that they were doing research down in Antarctica. I believe that 100% they had flying craft just like that. We actually know, because we just did a show last week or the week before on Victor Schomburger. And Victor Schomburger, who was a forester who studied water and the properties of water, held massive amounts of patents on what we can call feminine or implosive energy technology, was actually kidnapped by the Nazis and forced to work on various different projects. And one of the projects that he apparently worked on was the Nazi Flying Bell. And they had this in like 35, 36. Now, what's interesting about that is he talks about the White House where it was surrounded, and they claimed that these were Nazis. Now,
the UFOs.
Right. Instead of being actual UFOs, those were Nazis. Which is interesting because this is at the height of McCarthyism, where McCarthy's saying that the communists are still around, they're infiltrating our government, which he was right. Okay. And then you have, obviously, that event. You had Operation Argus with Project High Jump, where they believe that they're speculating that this was a nuclear attack on the bases in Antarctica, on the German bases, to take them over, and that the Germans responded by basically flying over the White House in their craft. And then this leads you back to Roswell, 1947, July 7th, 1947. And this is interesting. If you remember, Don Jr. was interviewing Donald Trump.
Yes.
Right? And this was on, I think it was July 14th, 2020. And Don Jr. asked him, I want to know about Roswell. Have you seen the files? And he goes, Donald Trump goes, that's an interesting one. He goes, you'll know about that one day. But that's an interesting one. And so he says that you'll learn about it one day, but it's an interesting one. And it wasn't like, oh, wow, that was nothing. But he says, it's an interesting one. And a lot of the reports and theories coming out these days about what that actually was, is there's three prevalent theories, okay? Number one theory is that it was extraterrestrials, right? Extraterrestrials that were flying over that area, and they were testing a new radar during that time. The new radar interacted with their craft and caused it to crash, and they recovered the bodies. That's one theory. Another theory is that they were time travelers from the future.
Yes.
And that they were going back to that point in time because obviously the Enola Gay, everything out there in Roswell, and they crashed. Another theory was that they were Nazis in their own craft, their Nazi craft, that flew up from Antarctica and were shot down. Because these were only defensive, these were not offensive crafts, so they had no way to defend themselves. But it had anti-gravity technology. Which I tend to think that there's potential of a little truth on both sides.
Usually it works that way, right? You look at everything and the truth is somewhere in the middle.
I would say that it's either or Nazis or time travelers. And I like the time travel theory because it would make sense.
Yeah. It
That
explains other things too.
it does. It explains a lot of things. That we would come back to that point in time. But if you were coming back to that point in time, then you'd also know that you crashed.
Paradoxes.
But the fact that you crashed means that you just created a time rift in a new stub in time. So it's kind of one of those conundrums, right?
Yes. Oh, time travel. Gotta love it.
Yeah.
I wonder how it actually works.
How it actually works. Well, if you go to the works of John Titor, right? John Titor actually described this really easy. He talked about how you have a singularity, a black hole, and that the black hole has a direction of rotation. And that direction of rotation will be consistent with the flow of time in your space-time dimensionality, which Hawking's actually proved that the rotation of a black hole is consistent with space-time, the warping of space-time, which is consistent with the passage of time. This is why, like in the movie, what was that one movie that came out with
Inception?
Not was it Inception? Inception was the dream one.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the one where they have to go into the black hole. He falls into the black hole. Matthew McConaughey.
I don't know this.
Interstellar. Matt Damon. Interstellar.
I've seen that, dude.
Oh, it's a good movie. It's a good movie.
Do I need to put it on my list?
You
All
do.
right.
But this is why when they go on that one planet, an hour there is 10 years on Earth. Because time is moving faster because of the force of gravitation and the warping of space-time. Mm-hmm. But when you get to it, is what you find is that the singularity can be created to have as much gravitational force on the outer edges that is consistent with the time flow within space-time, which means that the direction of the rotation is consistent with the direction of time of how it's flowing. So if you can reverse the direction, negate the singularity, make a negative singularity, the direction of time is backwards.
That's tripping me out. Interesting. In regards to paradoxes when it comes to time travel, do you think that holds water? Of like, if you go back and kill your mother and father, you'll never be born, or things like this? Or is it like multiple?
No, I think what happens is we actually we create different stubs. So I think that what happens, right? And that if we were able to time travel, that moment that you time travel, okay, you are already creating an alternative universe at that point in time, an alternative timeline. And I think that the theoretical model on this is actually very consistent, that there's no way you can't. That if you go back, that point in time that you were just at will now span through the consistency of the change of action that occurs in the future.
Logically speaking, that makes perfect sense, actually.
Yeah.
But what about going back and meeting yourself? Is that a big deal? People are like, can't do that.
I had a dream of that the other day.
Oh, Lord.
I showed up at my front door and I was older.
One of my favorite things in the world are dream characters.
Oh, dude. Well, don't we have one that's we have one we're going to talk about dreams. Let's bring that up again.
Okay.
Character.
All right. And oh my gosh, okay. Yeah, we'll get back to that. Let me write that down.
Well, actually, you know what? Let me bring him up now.
Let's go.
I can bring him up now. Hold on.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. Let me
That
bring
is so
him
cool,
up,
dude.
And I want to pull up his bio too because I don't want to, destroy Robert here. I want to get Robert back on the show too.
Absolutely. Bert said Doc Brown answered that. Thanks, Bert.
Doc Brown answered that. The flux capacitor, Vince. Come on. So the next show we're going to show you is Robert Wagner, who is president-elect of the International Association for the Study of Dreams and a summa cum laude graduate of Drake University with a degree in psychology. For the past years, he has been the co-editor of the online journal, The Lucid Dream Exchange, the only ongoing publication devoted specifically to lucid dreaming. Let's check this one out. I remember the movie Inception. right? Big movie. I mean, it was kind of a big Hollywood movie, right? But
Yeah.
what about mutual lucid dreaming? What's this all about?
Yeah, that's another interesting one. So in my first book, Lucid Dreaming Gateway to the Inner Self, I have an entire chapter on mutual lucid dreams, and because people are always really interested in this. And I want to tell you, if you're a lucid dreamer out there, it's going to be one of the hardest things to do, because first you've got to be a pretty good lucid dreamer, then you've got to find someone else who's a pretty good lucid dreamer, then on the same bloody night you both have to become lucid and pass on some information and stuff that you can wake up and confirm and all that kind of stuff. But I'll give you an example. Normally, here's what happens: one person is lucidly aware and the other person is still in the dream state. So one night I become lucidly aware. I'm in this restaurant and I'm looking at all the detail. I mean, I can even see the individual salt crystals in the salt shaker. That's how much detail is in this lucid dream. And through the door walks my friend who lives in San Francisco, Maureen. Everyone calls her Mo. And so I run up to Mo and I go, "Hey, Mo, this is a dream. This is a lucid dream. Do you know we're dreaming this?" And here's the wild thing. She had rapid eye movement. Her eyes were moving just like that, just like if you're watching a baby who's asleep and I'm thinking, oh crap, she's still in her own dream world and has stumbled into my lucid dream. And so I think, okay, I've got to get her lucid. So I grab her around the waist and I start to levitate. And I go, look, Mo, we're floating. We're like 10 feet up now. And I say, look, we're floating. And still she has this rapid eye movement. And then I think, crap, how do I get someone out of the dream state into my lucid dream? And so I'm starting to lose hope here. So I put my fingers into a peace sign and I shove it in her face. And I say, Mo, do you see this peace sign? You can use it as a symbol to become lucidly aware anytime you want. And I wake up and all. So the next day I thought, oh, she'll send me a note or give me a call. But, she didn't. So 3 months later, in the waking world now, I'm out in San Francisco on a business trip. And I realized I have some free time. So I call up Mo and I say, hey, Mo, you want to get together for lunch? And she goes, sure. Here's a restaurant in Burlingame on Main Street. I'll meet you there. So imagine this. So now it's noon in Burlingame, California. Here comes Mo walking down Main Street. And right when she gets right up to me, she doesn't even say anything. She puts her fingers into a peace sign and shoves it in my face. And I said, Mo, why are you doing that? And she said, I don't know why. I just felt like it.
Oh, God.
Oh, gosh, that gives me chills.
So that's how wild it is, because that movie Inception is kind of somewhat the same way as kind of trying to extract information out of somebody. Yeah. But in this instance, it appears like I imprinted into her subconscious mind something that 3 months later, on a sidewalk in Burlingame, California, she did to me. So that's how wild this is.
I think Jay was drinking in that one. He was falling asleep in the corner there. He was wanting to go lucid dream.
So funny.
He was so tired by the time Fringe came on. I'm glad he joined, but dude, Robert Wagner, awesome. And that's pretty crazy. I mean, I've had a few lucid dreams in my life. I can remember them all. And you know what's an interesting fact here?
What?
And this is going to be a personal question. Okay, but it deals with dreaming.
Is it a fact or a question?
Do you remember
Yes.
dreaming while going through puberty? I can tell you all about it.
I have a terrible memory. I'll tell you this.
Okay. So I remember at the point of like hitting puberty and
maybe a little bit, but not in detail.
Because I don't know if people know this, or women know this, but men have, something happen to them. Like when they come into being, right?
Yeah. And hair in funny places and voice changing.
Yeah. You also have something else. You wake up with something else and
imaginations, powerful imaginations. Yeah.
Yeah. Some things are happening. Anyways, people can ask me about that later. But I thought it was normal. But I remember this one night. It was around that same time that this one thing happened, and I was laying in bed to go to sleep, and your voice is getting squeaky and all this other stuff. Your hormones are flowing, and I remember falling backwards out of my consciousness. I remember feeling my consciousness recess backwards, and I remember falling right? And I remember going down like this tunnel. And like you're trying to gasp for breath, but you can't because your autonomous nervous system takes over, and you're out of your and you fall backwards, and it's really interesting because I had a series of lucid dreams during that whole point in time when I hit puberty around those same times.
Fascinating. I have lucid dreams often, meaning one at least once a month.
Oh wow. I'm lucky to get one once a decade.
Really?
That's why I can remember them all.
Huh.
So they're so
they
powerful.
happen all the time. I need to start documenting them better because I can't, for the life of me, remember them in detail like I do. For like most of the time, after like a month or so, I can remember my dreams very well.
Yeah.
Because I tell everybody about them and then I forget. But dream characters.
I've been having like a hard time remembering my dreams or even dreaming for that, but I don't get much sleep. But
I think I have to a little bit lately.
Dream characters. Tell me about it.
Mm-hmm. I think the idea actually came from this podcast and with Robert Wagner, with the clip we just watched, and from that show, and he talked about dream characters. And after that show, I had a dream and interacted with dream characters on a couple occasions. And it's just always tripped me out. And I'm always kind of semi-lucid. Like, I know I'm dreaming, but I can't necessarily completely control everything.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And I think there's something to dream characters. Because when you're talking to them, you can't read their mind. You don't, it's like they're different. They're separate from yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And they say the weirdest stuff to you when you ask them questions or go up to someone in a dream and talk to them. It's just weird.
So
it's trippy.
I've had quite a few experiences that I remember and recall with dream characters. Now, one thing I realize is that dream characters are archetypes of yourself. You're interacting with various archetypes of your own mind, your own personality. The question is I've told this story before, but it's good on dream characters. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. When I was much younger, much younger, probably 2005, 2006, I was in the military, and I had a series of dreams. It was the same recurring dream, like over and over for a few days. And I'm in my old hometown, and there's a monument that Teddy Roosevelt came in. It's a Civil War monument that Teddy Roosevelt came in and sanctioned and all this stuff. There's a Masonic temple. There's this monument that's like a ring around the town, like kind of one of those turn things that you have to go around the thing, right?
Yeah, roundabout.
I'm walking down the street. Excuse me, I got something in my throat. And I see like an ex-girlfriend, right? And I can't remember right now if she was in trouble or something, and I'm like, hey, stop. And I run towards her, and she's going through a crosswalk, right? And I see out of my peripheral vision, I see somebody. And I turn around and I go, who are you? And he looks at me, and this is like massively lucid dream, okay? And I look at him, I go, who are you? And he's in a suit, so he looks like it's like an old 1920s, 30s New York City suit, right? Kind of like got the 3-piece going, got the nice little, not a fedora, but a little bit of a top hat, but not a high top hat, right? And he's got a clipboard, and he's taking notes. And I turn around and I go, who are you? And he looks at me and goes, you can see me? And I went, yeah. Who are you? And he goes, oh, that's not good. And all of a sudden he goes like this, and he goes like this and turns around, and all of a sudden everything blew up right in front of me. And I'm blown into the explosion. And I remember this part because I was blown into the explosion, and like in the center of the explosion, so everything is like encompassed around me, and I'm like stuck in this space, kind of like it's like a frame refresh that gets stuck. And I'm sitting there going, what was that? What just happened? And then all of a sudden, boom, I wake up. And I'm like, holy shit, what was that? And I wrote it down. It was so powerful dream. The next night, I go to sleep. And same dream. Walking down the street, I see the ex-girlfriend in the crosswalk. And I remember what happened the night before. I remember the explosion. And I turn around and I go, who are you? And he goes, you can see me? I'm like, yes. And I'm like, you're not going to get me this time. And I ran away. Right? Oh, no. I said, you're not going to get me this time. And he did the same thing again, clicked his fingers. And I'm like, you're not going to get me this time with that because it's my mind. And all of a sudden, I'm right next to the Masonic Temple is a bank. All of a sudden, I'm in the lobby of the bank. And there's like 2 couches here. There's like this little security gate. There's a security guard. There's people walking in lines. And it's like old school tellers, like 1920s and 30s tellers. And I'm like, this isn't that bank. I've been in this bank multiple times. And like he was trying to get me out of lucidity. And I turned to the security guard and I go, dude, you're trying to think that I'm not going to recognize what this place is? This isn't the bank. And I go, who are you? And he goes, how can you see me? And that's all I'm going to tell of this story. I learned more from it.
That's
I learned
awesome.
more after this through many iterations of this. But basically, let me just say this, is that there are people and beings that watch you in your dreams.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm getting the chills remembering something, dude.
Yeah.
I had a dream and where I encountered myself.
Okay.
And I vaguely remember it. I may have told some of you this, maybe privately. But I remember being like at my house and looking across the street and seeing my car drive park in front of the house. And I'm like, why is my car, who's driving my car? And I see myself get out of my car and stand on the other side of the street looking in my direction. And that's all I really remember. Yeah.
Those are the points you need to become lucid. I remember one of like the craziest dreams I had. My old Navy ship was going down a stream through this town.
This
and
is
it's just
real
fly-
life. This is
my
a dream.
it's going down a stream, like a little
Stupid
creek.
question.
Yeah.
Wow.
And like they like, get in, Reed, we gotta go. And I jump on, and we're all like, I'm hanging onto the bow like this, and it's just like 80 miles per hour down this stream. And when we pass through a road, the railroad tracks would come down. But I'm like, well, how is the stream passing over there? Like, dude, it was like one of the trippiest dreams I've ever had in my life. And I became lucid inside. So I was inside the skin of the ship, and I was in my old work center, and I'm like, this isn't right. This isn't my work center. This is not what it looks like. This is. And then all of a sudden I was in the coop, which is like the barracks room. I'm like, no, I was just I'm like, I'm dreaming. And then you realize you're dreaming, and I'm like, okay, get up to the skin of the ship and let's get out of here, right? And then all of a sudden someone, like everybody in your dream, the dream characters, start interacting with you to put you back to sleep, to get you out of lucidity. It's the weirdest shit in the world.
I had a dream recently, dude, where I was lucid enough to where something really bad was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I knew I was dreaming, and I was like, not in full control though, but I'm like, all right, before I die, essentially, I don't remember the exact circumstance, but before I die, I'm just going to end this dream. And I just stop dreaming, don't remember, and then I just wake up later. Like, that was crazy. And I could do that. I could just get out of it.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Well,
It's so wild.
I'm going to go out of order here, but we're going to kind of like,
There's
I'm going to
no
go to the
order.
next one because it transitions really well from dreams. But Lynn Buchanan was one of the U.S. military's controlled remote viewers from 1984 through 1992. During that time, he worked as first as a reviewer and then as a database manager, trainer, training officer, and property book officer. Upon retirement, he worked as a computer systems analyst at the Defense Intelligence Agency. He then began his own computer data analysis company called Problem Solution Innovations. When the CIA declassified the existence of the military's remote viewing effort in 1994, it became public knowledge that Lynn had been their unit's trainer, and he was quickly overwhelmed with applications for training. He went on to create his own remote viewing schools, but this is Lynn talking about past lives. Let's check this out.
There is a creator. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Have you ever remote viewed, and I know that it goes back to the same thing that you've said before, but a past life,
Oh yeah,
your past life?
and that actually started when I went to when the Army sent me to the Monroe Institute, because they deal in past life regressions, and I hadn't believed in that before. You know, I was a little Baptist kid. I was raised Baptist. You're born, that's when you're created. You die, you go to heaven or hell. That's it. Period. End of story. It's not true.
Wow. Well, first, and we had a great discussion about the creator and stuff like that, that people have tried to remote view God and stuff. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But he's remote viewed past lives, and I love the topic of past lives. What about you? Have you ever, because I remember that one day I found that picture. Remember that picture?
Yes, I don't think it looked like me.
Oh, dude, it looked like you.
I think it's possible,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
Well, I typically would wear a bracelet, but the bracelet actually broke after many, many, many years of being worn. It's not actually broke, just one piece of it broke off, and I didn't want to damage it anymore from just wearing it. And so I took it off. But I have the bracelet that is my representation of past lives. And I mean, it's powerful. It is so powerful. Like, there's experiences in your life that just are unexplainable. I talked about one last night. It wasn't past lives, but it was like an entity that I came in contact with, and people were like, it was a demon. And no, it wasn't. Like, trust me, when you're in the presence of a fucking demon, you know it. When you're in the presence of something that is like benevolent, you know it. Like, you can sense it and feel it. Like, if you've ever been in that position, you would understand what I'm saying. But in the sense of past lives, there's, you know what you know, and you understand what you've been like introduced to throughout your life, right? Yeah. And this situation that I had when I was in Washington, D.C., Virginia area, and meeting somebody, I never imagined that would turn into what it turned into. But typically with life is that when you set down a particular path, the universe is going to open multiple doorways for you to discover the truth about that path. And for me, I got heavily involved with a book by Dr. Michael Newton called Journey of Souls.
Yes.
And there's like 3 or 4 or 5 books in the series. I read the first 2, and I was just like, whoa, powerful. Like, you read the book, and he talks about how he's done hypnotherapy with people for decades. And basically, he takes people to not past lives, but he takes them in between lives. So he'll take them to a past life, take them to the point of death, and then at the point of death, he'll say, okay, where are you now? What's happening? And he had a 92% accuracy with over 20,000 cases within over like a 40-year span. 20,000 cases. These people don't know each other, never met each other, and they all describe to a 92% accuracy the same place, the same experience. In the sense of going through a tunnel, seeing a light, going in, meeting, family members, these types of things. And then it changed and shifted into this kind of like this world of ethereal beings, of energy beings. And that there's like this council of elders, and that consciousness is this progressive state. It's like this growing state of your soul, and that life and all this stuff is basically where we come to learn. It's a training ground, and this real life is actually this energy state that we exist in, and that there's new souls and there's really, really old souls, and there's ancient souls, and everybody's at different levels of advancement within their soul life. And like, when you start reading the book, it's like reading memories. It's like, I feel like you just connect with it. And so it was interesting because I go and get this, what's called an LBL hypnosis session, a life between life hypnosis session. And you guys can probably look her up. Stephanie Kraft is the one who did mine. I think she's in Colorado now. She was in Virginia before. But I go in there, and I was taking a lot of stuff during that time. And I feel that there was some truth in mine, and that there was some some fantasy. So basically things that my mind, and I understand this later on, and I'll actually get into that if people want to hear about that. But she takes me to a past life, and I'm said, I'm at Wright-Patterson. I'm an electrical engineer who works at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I'm an old man in my late 80s, and I'm sitting in a rocking chair. I got one light on. It's very, very dim. I got a cup of tea right next to me. It's about 8:30 p.m. And, like, this is the detail that you had, right? It's about 8:30 p.m. at night. I go, I can feel myself, and I got like a heavy flannel on. I got jeans on, and I'm sitting down, and I know I'm gonna die. Like, I know that this is my day, and you know it's the 1940s, and I'm alone. But I understand it's okay, right? I don't feel alone. I don't, like, there's no sensation of any of that stuff. I feel accomplished. And you go through all these various different feelings, right? And you start to feel kind of like these feelings that you're feeling in the mind of that other life, okay?
Wow.
And you don't experience the actual physical death. What actually happens is, like, you know, you're there 1 minute and you take a breath, and next thing you know, you're just like, boom, you're pulled back. It's like falling asleep. It's like you just pulled back. When you're pulled back, you're like, but then you're like in this area. And I remember going through it. It was like this light, so dark, but with like a hint of like light flutter, gray area. And I remember because it was surrounding me, and you can, like, you're moving yourself like this, and it's just reacting around you, right? And like it's not a tunnel per se, but it's like encompassing around you, and there's only one way to go, and it's like a pinpoint of light in front of you. And as you get closer and closer, it's still a pinpoint of light. And I walk towards the light, and the voice comes in my head, and I remember saying this, that that most get to this point and don't know how to get through, except for those with the mind to know. And I just kept on moving forward. Next thing I know, it's you're pulled through the light. And I remember coming into this room, and fucking immaculate. And I remember it was like, so I go through the light, and next thing I know, I'm just walking. And it's this room that's made out of nothing but energy. And like, dude, when you're doing this in hypnosis, it is so vivid and profound. It's
really?
It's like lucid dreaming. Like, I can see it, I can feel it, I can hear it, I know it, I understand it. Detailed, incredibly detailed. And so I remember I'm walking down this stairwell, okay? And I remember that, think about a room made of like energy, white energy, glistening white energy, okay? Like clouds that are just like energy, glistening light, okay? And I remember there's a wall right here, and then the stairwell goes down, and there's a wall right here that ends at the bottom of the stair, and then it opens up into this big room. And if I looked out straight, there was these windows, kind of like translucent energy. And outside of them was just infinity, just like galaxies and stars, and everything was there. And I remember walking down the stairs, and there was nobody there. And I'm like, this is different than everybody else that I've read about. I expected family or people. And I turn right away from the wall at the bottom of the stairs, and I see on the other side of the room this tall woman, like 7 foot tall, really, really thin and skinny, wearing kind of like a white and silverish kind of like one piece dress, but it's not it's like a spacey type dress, right? Like etheric type of dress. And she has like glowing white hair, blonde white hair, crystal blue eyes, and her head is kind of like got the halo, but it's just kind of an energy floating around her head, right? And really thin. Like, so if you look at like Pleiadians, and by the way, I know nothing about Pleiadians back then. If you look like a Pleiadian, it'd be like a Pleiadian female, right? And so I walk up to her, And I go, hi. And she goes, I've been waiting for you, GETTR. She called me GETTR or something like that. And I'm like, oh, well, who are you? And she goes, my name's Sephora. And we just start having this conversation. And she tells me this fucking story about who many of us are on the planet, who humanity is, why we're in... No, not Jedi. The actual name would be Jeddha, like that. Jeddha. Which is interesting because if you go into the Hebrew Bible, that name and her name are actually together, and you can find them in the Hebrew scriptures, which I didn't know. I'd never looked at that stuff before, and so I find that out afterwards. But anyways, I'm talking to her, and she's telling me this amazing fucking story. But I realized during the session that the story that she's telling me is very similar to things I've been researching during that time. And I ask, like, why is this correlating with things that I've already been looking at? She goes, because we're all guided by the Creator. We're all guided by the Creator to our own truth, to the truth of our own realization, right? And I could get into the story, but I'd be here for hours. But the whole story is if you want to know the story that I'm actually talking about, go to Mars Chronicles. Go watch the story of one of the first or second episode on Mars Chronicles where I talk about the destruction of Tiamat, the planet. This was actually the story that she tells me. And she says that, and I'm not trying to, I'm not a weirdo or anything like that, but she tells me that that I'm incarnated on the planet and there's many like me on the planet, and we're not from here. And we're here to help humanity. Okay. And I'm not like, this Jesus complex or anything like that. We're here to help humanity because what's happening to them happened to our race. And I said, well, what is it? And she goes, and then you kind of like get this like dark feeling that comes over you. And she starts talking about this evil and what they are. And this is kind of weird because is this interdimensional enemy of this physical universe. And what they do is they hijack the birth and rebirth process. And so when people die, instead of actually going back, learning your lessons and all this stuff, that energy gets hijacked and sent right back down into this state of perpetual fear and instinct and all this stuff because they feed off of that emotion. And the more people that are on the planet, the more emotion that they can feed and the bigger their society grows. And it's just an evil, but it's highly advanced, but to them, we're just ants. And
that's really interesting.
Yeah. And she explains this, that they manifest in our own plane, that they can take over beings in our own plane and that their planet was in this solar system.
Yeah.
Millions upon millions of years before humanity ever existed. Many of them had left this solar system and spread out, but their planet, their planet was destroyed, or their planet was basically annihilated. Their people were annihilated, and they kind of went to the outskirts of the galaxy to find refuge. And they went back to one of their home planets here in this solar system, and they set up a small colony, and then were discovered by them, and that planet was destroyed. Damn. And so only a few of them survived and came here and helped to set up life on this planet. And knowing that the race of beings millions of years ago on this planet were not as that advanced, they knew that these beings wouldn't target them because they need a specific level of advancement in consciousness in order for that to happen. And so this is kind of the story that she tells me, and I get out of it and I'm like, like holy shit, that was crazy, right? And like I remember it vividly. So I don't really think anything of it. I'm like, maybe my mind just made it up. I've been researching a lot of that stuff, and maybe my mind just created a story to fill in the blanks. Mm-hmm. A few weeks later, I used to do these meditations, and these are actually really good meditations for people to try if you're trying to get non-local with your consciousness, is let just a little bit of light in your room at nighttime. Lay flat on your back. And everybody usually has like a light in their room that's on the ceiling, a ceiling fan or a light. And so when that little beam of light comes through, it's going to hit that top light. So like if you have a light on in your living room and the light through the door peeks through, it's going to hit that ceiling fan or whatever, but just a little bit. So everything else is dark. Okay. And what you do is you focus on the light on the ceiling or the ceiling fan, and you keep your eyes open while in bed laying on your back. And you use your mind to cancel the light out and make the whole room dark while your eyes are open. And I learned this because my buddy, he can fall asleep with his eyes open. Right?
Wow.
So he can fall asleep with his eyes open. I say, how do you do that? He goes, the light just goes away. I just cancel the light out. And I go, oh, so I can use my mind to cancel the light out. So I started doing meditations like this. So I'm doing this meditation, and I'm canceling the light out, and I'm like getting down, and like you kind of like, you don't go really cross-eyed, but everything just starts kind of slowly going away, get darker. And usually when you get to that point, you're also falling asleep. You're going into hypnagogia.
Yeah.
And right at this point of hypnagogia, I hear my left ear, Josh. And it's not in my ear. It's outside of my ear. And it says, come here. And I just turned my attention that way, and I was moving up this like well, like a black well, right? And I'm moving up.
Okay. And
I rise up, and I'm watching these like 4 beams of light, including that woman from before. Okay, she's there. And I'm watching her with like 3 other beings, and they're all talking. And I can't understand a word they're saying. Like they're not like they're like it's just like gibberish. And I'm like watching them, and she looks and she goes like that, and then sees me, and she goes, "What are you doing here?" I go, "You just called me." She goes, "I didn't call you." And I said, "Yeah, you did. I heard my name, and I can't." She goes, you can't even be here right now." I go, "What do you mean I can't be here?" She goes, like, "No, literally, there's no way possible that you can be here right now." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "You're right there." And she points to one of the energy beings. And I go, "What?" And like, then she explains it. And she explained it like, so, by the way, this is all within like 30 seconds, a minute and a half. Okay. And this will be kind of crazy, kind of like all this is happening within 30 seconds, a minute and a half. And then so she explains it to me that what I'm experiencing is a higher dimensionality right now of consciousness, and that my higher self, my light body, my astral self, my upper higher level of consciousness is actually communicating with her. And what I'm witnessing is a creation that is occurring within my mind, because my mind cannot comprehend or extrapolate the higher dimensionality of reality. So it creates an illusion of what it believes is actually happening. And she said, I can't be there because I was already with her. And so she's like, this is weird. We've never had that lower basal consciousness come up with the higher consciousness. So there's kind of like a convergence that happens. You have a material consciousness and you have a spiritual consciousness that merge together. And they form this consciousness that you're experiencing. This is at least how I understand it. And that she had never experienced that lower consciousness coming up and being there to experience it. And apparently my higher self was just as confused as I was. But this actually explained a lot. And I'll kind of, so I come out of it. I learn a whole bunch. She shows me a whole bunch of stuff about this idea that we can't experience these higher dimensionalities. So what happens is that our mind creates this illusion of what it believes it's seeing. Right. And so next thing I know, boom, I'm back in my body. I'm looking up and I'm looking around. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what the hell was that? It was only like a minute and a half, few minutes that was in there. It's 7 hours later. 7 hours later. And I'm like, no way. Like, I didn't get any sleep, and I was still tired. Right? So I knew it was like kind of a level of reality to it. So I get in my car and I'm driving to work to Washington, D.C. I worked at the Washington Navy Yard. And I'm driving, and the radio show was Elliot in the Morning, which is like a local rock station. This is the rock DJ who does the morning show, and he's got Sammy Hagar on. And Sammy Hagar you can probably date this by knowing the time that Sammy Hagar released his book, but Sammy Hagar just released his book, his memoirs or something. And Elliot's asking him about, what's this thing about you being abducted by aliens?
Okay. Wow.
And Sammy's like, well, dude, I was at Cabo Wabo in Cabo San Lucas. And there's this one night that I was laying in bed. And he says, one night I was laying in bed. I was dozing off. I felt sleepy. And, dude, I was taken by aliens.
Yeah.
And Elliot's like, well, explain. He goes, well, dude, they don't take your body, man. They just take your consciousness.
Yeah.
And I go, whoa, holy... Dude, that's exactly what I was just told last night. And so I'm like, dude, was I abducted? Or did he have a higher dimensional experience that he perceived as an alien abduction? Then all these other alien abduction things started to make a lot more sense, that we're actually, our higher consciousness is being pulled up. We're connecting with it somehow. Our lower consciousness or mind, human mind, is starting to experience this upper dimensional level. And so it starts hallucinating what it believes is actually happening out there. Mm-hmm. And so this can be very scary for people. So this can be projected as a point of fear. This is why when we have, like, you know, we see UFOs are continuously changing. There are saucers, then there are triangles. Now they're just spheres, and they're the size of drones, right?
Right. And they're followed up by balls of energy.
Right.
Which trips me out.
So yeah,
they're not always technological.
So yeah, that was I didn't even really get into my past life experience. That was only one. Then I met, I started talking about the bracelet. And so Stephanie, right, did my LBL. So those are the experiences I had. And I had plenty more experiences from this point in time. Because by this time, I'm really deep into occultism and magic. And not the evil occultism, but more hermeticism, this type of thing. And I'm really getting deep into this, and I'm like honing in on skills. Like I got some skills by this time. And I realized that I wanted to go out there and get trained in Reiki.
Okay.
So I go through some courses, and I end up getting my Master Reiki certification. So I go to do my Master Reiki certification, and I go to the same place that I had my LBL hypnosis session. And Stephanie's the one teaching the course. And I go down the steps. I remember I went down the steps and I entered the door. Right when I walked in that door, dude, it was like walking into a web of energy. You're just like, it's like things just became entangled. Like, it's like two magnets coming together and finally just saying, yeah, we're here. And I walk in and the dude looks up at me. There's only one guy in the room. He looks up at me and goes, did you feel that? I'm like, yeah, man, what was that? He goes, I don't know, but I think we were meant to meet. He's like, sit down. And so we started talking. We had a lot of stuff in common. He was going through life changes. I was getting ready to transition out of the military. I wanted to get out. We're both doing the Reiki certification. More and more people showed up. We were all left-handed. Everybody from the instructor, 7 of us, all left-handed, which was just weird.
That's really unlikely to happen. Wow.
Yeah. And we go through this incredible like Reiki master certification session. It was powerful. We all do energy healing on each other. It was really cool moment in life. But me and this guy, we end up like keeping in touch. And he tells me about his brother who just passed away. His brother was a world-renowned herbologist and botanist, traveled the world, studied with various different tribes and shamans and monks around the world. Never had a job, never had a driver's license. You know, college was paid for by donations from people who wanted to see him succeed. Just an amazing human being, and he passed away really, really young. Rest in peace, Frank Cook out there for anybody who knows who that is. And his brother was kind of transitioning through his brother's death. And he's like, hey, I'm going to go and travel to the places my brother went and kind of give homage and stuff like that. You know, he had a house that I was trying to help him take care of the legal stuff, and we're trying to work all this stuff out. And so he takes off to like India and Nepal and Thailand. And I don't forget about it. We stay in touch. But he comes back, and I'm still in the military, and he's like, we got to meet. We got to meet. I need to talk to you. Okay. Right. And so the night before, I'm like, man, what do I know this guy for? Like, I just, like, we have this connection. Like, where does this connection begin? Right. And so I go into this meditation, and I sit down, I go into this deep meditation, and I go in there saying, I want to know how him and I know each other. And all of a sudden I go to this point of lucidity, like vivid. I can see it in my head right now. I can feel it. And there's this like log wall. So a wall made out of like cut logs that aren't planed and stuff. You know how you plane a log yeah. They're not planed. So it's really, really old, like Roman style wall, but it's halfway in the ground and out. And it's kind of like a coverage area. And then there's like dirt, sand behind it. And then like tracings of grass kind of span around, but people have walked and trampled on it. And I turn around and he's standing there. And I can tell by looking at him that he's a general, Roman general. And he's in full Roman battle armor. And I look down at myself and I'm his under general. So I'm like one underneath him. Mm-hmm. And he kind of he says something and it doesn't really comprehend. Like he says it again and he's like, are you ready to do this again? And I'm like, yes. And we're getting ready to go to battle. And we go knee to knee. So my left knee to his left knee to knee, clasp hands. And we pick up some dirt, clasp hands together. And we put our heads down and together and say, and this is in my vision, and say, if we say a prayer in Latin, then we say, if we shall die in this life, shall we meet each other in the next? And I came out of it, boom, crying, like, what the fuck? Like, that was powerful. And the next day, I was driving 80 miles to go see him after he got back from this trip. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, how do I tell this guy this stuff? He's going to think I'm fucking wackadoodle crazy. Ah, man, what am I supposed to do, right? So I go in, and it's like this tea shop, and like the whole inside is really like dimly lit. It's brown, and there's like tables on the side like this, but then he's at the center table. So you walk in the front door, it's like the center table, and he's like sitting on the bench facing the door, and he's got like a little box in front of him. And I'm walking, I'm like, hey, and he's showing me pictures, going through, telling me about his trip, and, explaining everything. And he goes, then I got to the Sleeping Buddha Temple in Thailand. And I meet the head guy there, the head Rinpoche there, who knew my brother. And he's like, come on back with me. And he pulls me back into, this is my friend telling me this. He pulls him back into the back room. And he goes, I got something for you. This is the head monk at the Sleeping Buddha Temple because I got something for you. And he opens up this box for my buddy, and it has 2 bracelets in it. This bracelet these 2 orange bracelets in there from like a Napoleon bracelet. And he goes, one is for you, and one is for a person that you're connected with through many lives. And he goes, you'll know who it is. And he puts the towel and he gives him the box. And I'm like, whoa. And I'm like, dude, this is such a cool story. Who is it? And he's like, looks down at the box, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, well, brother, it's you. And he hands me the box and hands me the bracelet, blessed by the guy at the Sleeping Buddha Temple. And I'm like, whoa. Like, I go, Ken, I got to know, man. I do believe this. And I said, I had this meditation last night, and I asked myself, how do we know each other? And I want to ask you, how do we know each other? He goes, man, I've thought about this, but I think that we were Roman soldiers, and we died together in battle and promised each other that if we died, we'd meet each other in the next life. And my heart went boom, boom, like, holy shit, and just tears. I'm like, okay, man, cool. Like, all right, man, this is real. This is fucking real. Like,
yeah, wow.
There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, totally convinced. Like, bam. And it's interesting because a few months later, I get out of the military, and our actual idea was to go out there and create a holistic therapy center.
Yeah.
And so at the time, my wife was going to massage therapy school. He was going to massage therapy school. I was going to go out, go do it when I got out. We all were Reiki certified, and we were going to open up this holistic massage therapy or holistic center. And at the last moment, I'm like, something just did not feel right about that area. I had to get out of there.
Yeah.
Not about him, but it was just Washington, D.C. It was Barack Obama. I was getting kicked out of the Navy. And something said, get to Colorado. And that's where Jeff was at the time. And so kind of explain it. And my wife said, like, okay, let's do it, right? Like, she was still in school. And so I moved to Colorado. And like I said, dude, move on with the dream, do the holistic center. He just sold it a year ago. I'm not going to tell you how much he sold it for. But anyways, you know, he's like, you know, brother, it's like we come together in these lives and we weave in and out. And he goes, we will meet again when the time is right. 10 years. 10 years. All of a sudden he hits me up. Out of nowhere. And we've been kind of communicating since. But it's just like, It's like one of those people that you can just sit down with.
Yeah.
And you haven't missed a beat. You know them in and out, right?
Yeah.
It's quite amazing, but it's powerful when you have an experience like that. That is like intertwined and connected to where you have this strong vision of something that you've never could even imagine. And all of a sudden it's correlated directly with a person. Like, that's just uncoincidental.
That's an amazing story.
Dude, that story just took up all our time. But we can do one more. Let's do one more. Let me pull up a good one here. Ooh. All right. This will be a good one to end the show with. Well, we're gonna play it and then talk about it. We might go a little bit over, but I do have to go get moving here. All right. For those who don't know, J.R. Nyquist is an expert on Russian and communist military and foreign policy. He's an independent journalist, writer based in Eureka, California. He's previously worked for World Net Daily as well as Newsmax. He writes for Financial.com, but he's also a student of philosophy and esotericism. And this is what really got me involved with J.R. Nyquist and a lot of his work, because he integrates a lot of this medieval, hermetic, and alchemical philosophy into a lot of his perspective on kind of what's happening in the world. And so this is his take on what are the questions I asked him. Check this out.
I had a long conversation, a number of them, with Victor Kulish, who was one of the lead scientists in the Soviet Star Wars program in the 1980s. That was there. He's a laser scientist. They were trying to make a laser super weapon to shoot down missiles back then. Actually goes back to the 1970s. And he told me an amazing story. His book, by the way, is on Amazon, Victor Kulish. It's on laser physics. And he was doing equations for a year with pencil and paper. And he had an epiphany. He heard God's voice. He'd worked out an equation, which he calls it like a God theory.
Yeah.
Every system has a God. It's a God principle. And he uses the Matryoshka doll as a model in his book. You know how Matryoshka doll has one doll inside the other, and it pulls out another doll inside of that one, and then the dolls open. And he says that's a system.
Yes.
It's got layers of interlocking things in the system. And he said, well, every system has the biggest doll and the smallest doll. It doesn't go infinitely up or infinitely down. And he says there's ramifications to that about the limits of the system. And it ends up, the math says, this is what he told me, this is why he heard the voice of God, he believed, is that physical reality is not the primary or ultimate reality. He said what the equation showed was the ultimate reality is mind. And that we live in a hierarchy of mind, and the highest mind, God, that's a God system, and the other higher minds around it are basically manifesting reality from moment to moment, and we're living in it. We're the lesser intelligence that live in the universe that they have created.
Now, isn't that the similar perspective of the ancient Hermeticists?
Yes. In fact, you're right. It is. And in fact, it's kind of the perspective of most all religions.
Yeah.
if you look at all religions, the physical world is not the primary. I mean, you look at Christianity, God created the heavens and the earth. So the physical universe is created. It's secondary. The primary reality is God, and he creates this physical matter and time space as a secondary reality. So it has a beginning and it has an end.
What do you think, Vince?
God is light, man.
Well, you know, it's interesting what he said there at the end about in Christianity and how God created the heavens and the earth. As in, God in his own realm already existed. So God didn't create everything in Christianity. He created everything for us.
Everything not him.
Everything not him, right.
Opposite him.
Right, and then he was talking about this Russian, who is the head of the Russian space weapon system development, that was talking about his God theory, and that every system, so the universe, you could look at this in the sense of multiverse system, is that every multiverse has its own hierarchy of mind and hierarchy of God, of which God is the existential combination of all hierarchies put together. There is no end, there is no beginning. But apparently this guy worked it out mathematically, but it's crazy to think about it like that, isn't it?
And I think it was J.R. Nyquist who was saying that God is light, is energy, and if he creates everything else, he has to create it out of like the antithesis of himself because of the math. It's like if you do it in equation form, you have God energy on one side, and then the rest of the equation on the other side, you have to subtract God energy to create something.
So is why this is, so what you're talking about here is what this Russian mathematician is actually saying.
Yes,
is that,
but this is where they get the idea of we exist in hell because we are not the other. We're not that God energy. We are the other energy he created. And it is the opposite kind of energy of what is God energy, which is light, and that this kind of thing is from what I understood.
I get that. And if we took like Hermetic philosophy, chemical philosophy, as well as kind of like modern philosophical understandings of this, is what he's trying to say is that what is the only thing in the universe, in the known existence of at least you and I in our very limited form,
ourselves,
that can create something out of nothing?
I don't know.
There's only one thing in the universe that can create something out of nothing.
Really? God?
Well,
what?
Ultimately, yes, but the answer is God. But that's the final equation.
So what?
What are you creating right now that's deriving from nothing?
Energy? I don't know.
Go a little bit further. What are you thinking about?
Oh, thought.
Thought is the only thing that can produce something, create something out of nothing.
Pretty much.
And so, if mathematically, and this is what J.R. Nyquist is saying, if God had to deduct from himself to create, then God would cease to be. He would de-evolve himself, right? And so we can't have God, basically, you can't be various aspects of God like that. But instead, we have to look at it that God creates us within its mind. That we are thoughts, that the universe, the physical reality is all a thought within the mind of God. And a good analogy for this is a book. The characters in a book. Like, think about Mark Twain, right? The great Arthur, Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain. And think about Huck Finn, right? Now, in the book, Huck Finn is a character that is contained within that book. Huck Finn exists outside of that book in the minds of other people. But in that book, Huck Finn only exists as Huck Finn. Now, Samuel Clemens wrote the book. Now, did Samuel Clemens put part of himself into Huck?
Of course.
Of course. But is everything that Huck is everything that Samuel Clemens was? No. So the idea was given to this creation of this character, which had pieces of the creator in it, but it's limited in its scope within this book. Now, could Huck Finn say that I am Samuel Clemens? No, because that is inherently false. And so there comes this old axiom from the great philosophers that God is within me, but yet I am not he. God is within me, but yet I am not he. And it comes from that analogy that we are merely thoughts within God's mind, but yet those thoughts are not him. If that makes sense.
It does. Pretty cool.
Love it, man. Love it. We're 2 minutes over. But hey, guys, this was a great show. We got to do this more often. I actually love this. This is pretty cool. Yeah, this is actually really cool. We're going to put these clips up. These clips will be posted in the next few days on all of our channels. I hope that you guys did enjoy the show tonight. I see a lot of new people who got to check out the show, which is cool. So don't forget to subscribe and check us out over at redpills.tv. We're all linked up. We also have a private social network, socialredpill.com. Please check that out. There will be a after Zoom that is immediately open right after this. If you go to socialredpill.com, sign up, free profile, and you go to the left-hand column where it says events, and you click on Social Red Pill Zoom. You click on that. That's where everybody will be. Vince will be there in about 30 minutes or so. I will be there in about an hour and a half, 2 hours. I have to go run some errands. I have to go unpack a moving truck. Yeah, so I hope you guys have a great night. I'll see some of you guys later. Everybody else, you guys have a great night. And hope you enjoyed the show. Take care. Good night.
Either we will get the full cooperation of other governments to stop this menace, or we will expose every bribe, every kickback, every payoff, and every bit of corruption that is allowing the cartels to preserve their brutal reign. And it is indeed brutal.
And they call me Eye Patch McCain. I haven't, look.
Frankly, if you look at the media, where the media is a closed media, we don't have an open, free media anymore. They don't want to hear anything. They don't write about it. It's collusive. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. It all happened during this period of time. It happened just before the election. They wouldn't talk about certain subjects that you know better than anybody, Michael. And, that's the beginning of communism.